This show is supported by Blue Land. We hear a lot about microplastics in oceans and food, but they can also come from products we use every day at home, like cleaning products. If you're trying to be more mindful about microplastics, check out Blue Land. Blue Land makes dish soap, laundry detergent, and other household products that are 100% plastic-free. Their formulas are also made without dyes, parabens, or harsh chemicals. Instead of repeatedly buying plastic bottles, you just use tablets, making it an easy way to cut down on waste at home. Blue Land is a certified B Corp and Leaping Bunny cruelty-free certified. Their formulas are EPA's Safer Choice certified, and many products have also earned Cradle to Cradle's Gold Material Health Certificate. Make the switch today. Get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/PRX. That's blueland.com/PRX.
A lot of the things that you might see that make you uncomfortable in people experiencing homelessness are symptoms of homelessness. They are the things that happen to people when they are forced to live outside for years or decades.
For years, some Us and Them episodes have focused on homelessness across West Virginia. As more cities and towns grapple with this growing problem, some have passed laws that prohibit camping on public property to discourage encampments and illegal activity. The ACLU says in the last 2 years, more than 350 cities and a dozen states have passed laws that would either warn, fine, or jail people for sleeping outside. In West Virginia, there are 5 cities with such laws: Bluefield, Clarksburg, Parsons, Williamson, and Morgantown. But critics argue these policies don't address the root of the issue.
When our elected officials make policy response to our community members' discomfort and fear of people experiencing homelessness, they're not actually responding, they're reacting.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them, the show that tells stories about the things that divide us. I'm Trey Kay. Earlier this year, the challenges confronting homeless people in the Mountain State were highlighted in a community forum held on the West Virginia University campus in Morgantown. The Mountaineer Indivisible Citizens Action Group, or MICA, asked me to moderate its event called Unhoused in Morgantown: Barriers and Solutions. On any given night, advocates estimate that Morgantown has between 100 and 150 people who are homeless. The city only has about 50 shelter beds, so for many people, sleeping outside or camping is the only option. The panel at the community forum included people from a coalition of nonprofit organizations who work directly with homeless people. Each panelist offered some background about the work their organization does, beginning with Zach Morton, minister at First Presbyterian Church in downtown Morgantown.
We're kind of right in the thick of everything. Been serving that congregation for about 8 years. So when I started serving there, I inevitably got out into the community and started making friends and taking advantage of the relationships that a number of our congregations had, and also working with other congregations. So I'm going to be speaking tonight kind of from that perspective of how I've experienced and seen churches collaborate to meet certain needs on this particular issue. And part of that piece of learning was learning all just the very practical barriers that most folks don't think about when they're just generally thinking about homelessness, and how people end up in a crisis situation, and then how difficult it is to get out of a crisis situation. And the conversation then quickly can turn into understanding all of those different pieces that are set up not to be easy solutions for people. I think that's one of the presuppositions we hear a lot, is that, oh, it can't be that hard for you to get into housing if you just take some personal responsibility. And that just is not the reality that people face.
Another panelist at Morgantown's community conversation on homelessness was Laura Jones. She's executive director at Milan Pushkar Health Right. It's a free clinic that provides healthcare access.
Health Right works very hard to try to reduce the barriers that exist to getting health care. And also, we work very hard to be as non-judgmental as possible. We have worked for years with folks that are unhoused and struggled with them along the way. Where do I keep my medications? We discovered at one point that people who were unhoused were hiding their medications at the old Dollar General. And the Dollar General would find them behind something way in the back and bring them back to Health Right. And then we would make sure that the clients got their medications again. But that was the safest way to prevent them from being lost or stolen. Those are the kinds of barriers that we have seen and tried to work around. That has been my focus for the last 26 years. And one of the old mottos is housing is healthcare. We take that very seriously. When you are on the street, you are not healthy. I have witnessed people who get housed and 6 months later, I don't recognize them because they look so much healthier.
Community Forum panelist Erin Shelton works with another organization in Morgantown. She's founder and board president of Project Rainbow and the Rainbow House.
We serve folks who are typically ostracized, discriminated against because of their gender and sexuality, and we also serve other folks who tend to be left out of services, and that includes people struggling with substance use disorder and severe mental illness, and people experiencing chronic homelessness. And we are now funded through the West Virginia DOHS. I am a person with lived experience of substance use disorder myself and a person in long-term recovery. And working in the harm reduction program with Health Right, I saw a lot of folks who were not able to access services because of the stigma that they face for their substance use disorder. So our goal is to be low barrier and inclusive for everyone, regardless of their identity and regardless of their life situation and struggles. We want to meet people where they're at, but not leave them there.
Our final panelist from the Housing Forum is Mindy Thorne, director at Catholic Charities of West Virginia. She works with Grace Shelter, which is located within Hazel's House of Hope. Catholic Charities took over this shelter in 2024 and transitioned it into a low-barrier shelter.
So what that means is the requirements that people probably had and faced previously, such as a requirement of sobriety, having identification, a proof of income, and a criminal background check being done before they could even enter the shelter services. We no longer require that. We have on-site case management that allows for our clients to get individualized, specialized care. We make the commitment to walk this path with them. We do that by showing them grace, compassion, and understanding that they deserve dignity, regardless of what their history is. But the thing to keep in mind, we only have 19 beds. So it becomes unbelievably difficult to move our clients through in the fashion that we need to move them through with the barriers that are present. We, for the last 2 years, have partnered with some other service providers in our area to open an emergency warming shelter. Our past season was a partnership with the West Virginia Coalition to End Homelessness, and our shelter was located on West Run Road. That opened an additional 36 bed spaces for the months of December to March. Within 4 days of that shelter opening, we hit 50 people. So we definitely had to pivot, and us at Grace moved some space around and took on an additional 27 people. So in the months of December through March, our Morgantown community, in addition to just what Grace and the warming shelter were serving, was 100 plus people. That's the biggest thing about understanding low barrier, is these people were not stopped at the door and essentially read the Miranda Act before they could seek emergency services.
Most people have opinions about the homeless population in their community or neighborhood. But Laura Jones, who works with the Free Health Clinic, says that image is often incomplete and based on stereotypes. If you had to name a common thread, not a stereotype, what shows up again and again in the people that you serve? Go ahead, Laura.
Trauma, childhood trauma, family violence. Every single person who's unhoused is unique. So there's no one way that people behave. There's no one reason that people end up in this situation other than the fact that we don't have affordable low-income housing. And then once you become unhoused, you often become traumatized from that experience. So it makes it even harder to process and do all of the things that are required of you in order to get to housing.
Mindy Thorne with Catholic Charities continues.
I think the biggest misunderstanding is that automatically it's assumed that everyone is an addict, that that's how they got there, is that they spent their money on drugs, and that's how they lost their house, and that's how they lost their family. And my answer to that is, obviously, that's not the case with the parties that we serve. As Laura mentioned, we have a severe lack of affordable housing within our area. So many times the story I'm seeing is these are people that were working full-time jobs, had families, taking care of themselves, and an illness hit them, or they lost their job, or whatever issue has presented to them in life, and they got the short end of the stick. They ended up out on the streets, which in turn does turn some people towards substance abuse, does turn some people towards some of the less desirable behavior, but that doesn't make them any less equal to having availability to the services we provide.
We want to make assumptions and judgments about people quite often, and usually those take the form of generalizations. And when it comes to the people that we're talking about tonight, those are often those negative stereotypes and stigmas that we talk about.
That's Minister Zach Morton.
One of the biggest challenges to this, I think, in hearing more stories, is the fact that if we reduce this and think that we're only talking about individual people's stories, we are so off base from what is actually affecting these folks and the situations that they're in. Because what we're seeing is basically like a report card on how well our society is doing at caring for other people, right? And we're seeing that we're not getting a very good grade right now. And instead of dealing with that fundamental problem, I think a lot of folks' reaction is that we don't want to deal with the bad grade that we're getting because that's going to require a lot of work and a lot of introspection and a lot of examination, right? And it reflects poorly upon us. And I think we have a real aversion, especially in America, to doing that work because we have such a sense of rugged individualism. But the reality is that we're suffering and seeing the results of bad policy that has been made for decades.
Those policies can undermine the programs and support in place for homeless people. Laura Jones, who works with HealthRight, the Free Health Clinic, also says that when we stereotype people, we lose something essential: human connection.
When we stigmatize people who are homeless, especially people who are using substances, or LGBTQ people, we end up in a scenario where they lose connection with the community, and it makes everything that happens to them worse. And what do we do in response? We point fingers at each other. We say, HealthRight is causing this problem because they have a harm reduction program. And so it's really important that we remember that we're all connected and we all need connection. And when you're walking down the street and you see someone that you think is unhoused, say hi. And you will find a whole different world out there, believe me.
We need to change the way that we think and respond to homelessness.
Aaron Shelton, founder of Project Rainbow.
When our elected officials make policy in response to our community members' discomfort and fear of people experiencing homelessness, they're not actually responding, they're reacting. A lot of the things that you might see that make you uncomfortable in people experiencing homelessness are symptoms of homelessness. I am in close proximity alone with people experiencing homelessness, and I don't feel afraid. I don't feel that they're a danger to me. And I don't want to invalidate anyone's discomfort or fears because, of course, we are dealing with people that some of them do have severe mental illness. There are behaviors that can happen that do seem startling and can be scary. But I think that if we all just do a bit to educate ourselves and to meet people, right? Humanize them. Because once you meet people, they're not scary anymore, right? They're people, they're your neighbors, they're your community members, they're your friends. It changes our perspective. And when we change our perspective, it does make things easier for elected officials to make policy that is conducive to minimizing and solving homelessness. But ultimately, we do need our elected officials to step up and advocate for those policies right now. And if they do that, we will slowly start to see the changes in our community and in our society that will come as a natural result of those policies. People healing, people getting into housing, people getting the services that they need.
Where does the work that you do fall short? So what are the limits of what you could do?
Capacity is the one that jumps up forefront. And, Aaron and I were talking prior to the event starting that it's never a gap in time. Somebody exits the program and there's somebody already waiting at the door to take their space. The recent camping ban that was put into place, they put these policies into place without a solution as to where they were going to go.
Right.
And just expected those of us sitting on this side of the fence to handle it.
While a handful of West Virginia cities, including Morgantown, have camping bans in place, this year, lawmakers did not have the votes to pass a statewide law against public camping. So my question to you is, what happens or what has happened in this community when sleeping outside or camping becomes illegal?
Your shelters get overran. People die when we're full and they have nowhere else to go. Their resources run out and it causes a significant loss of life.
Zach, do you know where people are going when they're pushed out of visible spaces?
Well, they end up going farther away, which makes it that much harder. We just keep piling barriers up. And not only is that a physical barrier, but in conversations we've had, the impact to morale for people, a number of people who have been here for a long time, longer than I have, just because their house doesn't mean this isn't their home.
Moderating the housing forum in Morgantown left me more aware of the challenges facing not only people who are homeless, but their advocates and allies. As our Us and Them team started to think about the community conversation as material for an episode, I knew I needed to hear another perspective. Gino Shirelli is a delegate from the 78th House District, which covers southeast Monongalia County, including parts of Morgantown. Shirelli is a Republican serving his second term. I spoke with him after the event at West Virginia University to see why he supports a ban on public camping and wants to see similar legislation passed statewide.
A lot of people that I know have had packages stolen. They catch stuff on their cameras all the time, people trying to break into their sheds. That's constituents telling me these are the problems that I'm seeing in my daily life. So it's my responsibility as their delegate to bring these concerns to Charleston, whether it's conversation or whether it's something larger in the form of actual legislation. I think the time for debate is over, and I think it's time to actually follow through with what people said that they want.
Shirelli worked in Child Protective Services and later as a substance abuse counselor in a methadone clinic. He's now a business development coordinator for the WVU Medicine's Children's Hospital. He says a statewide camping ban would make enforcing the law easier.
Instead of having this patchwork set of rules from municipality to municipality, from county to county, a blanket coverage of legislation makes it easy on law enforcement across the state. There's no questions. They have the same set of rules to abide by no matter where they are. So it also helps people that might be experiencing homelessness. They understand that no matter where you are in the state, that you cannot camp on public property.
How are we going to enforce that? In many cases, you would think that small county or city law enforcement may only have so many resources who can go out and enforce that. And if they're working on enforcing a camping ban, that there's other things that they're not dealing with. Have you heard that criticism?
I've heard the criticism. I don't think it necessarily holds water, because when I talked to our law enforcement here, they were mostly excited to have it as an option that was available to them. This isn't a bill that says, as a police officer, as law enforcement, you must go out on a hunt for people that are just trying to survive every single night. That's not the case. What I really envision this being used as is, if there is someone that is particularly a problem, that is causing a problem, and a police officer encounters them and they are homeless, well, instead of trying to be reactive and catch them and doing something after the fact, this says to them, okay, well, we can tell them, hey, you can't live here. This gives them something that they can use to try and mitigate any future incidents.
Have we seen any capacity problems in Morgantown with regard to their camping ban?
As far as I'm aware, I think only one person has been arrested since the Morgantown ordinance went into place. And I think that the reason why this individual was arrested, because it was negative degrees outside, I think it was done as more of a precautionary measure as opposed to something punitive.
So far, a statewide camping ban has not passed both legislative bodies. However, I asked Shirelli how he would define success if such a bill becomes law.
If the camping ban goes into effect and then petty crime rate goes down, that would be a measure of success. The biggest things to remember here is that people that are experiencing addiction or homelessness are all at different phases in recovery, and metrics of success look different for everybody. So when I was working at the methadone clinic, success for somebody was maintaining their day job. Success for another person was getting a car. I don't think that more people jailed is necessarily a measure of success. But if you look at all of the other things, if I look at the vandalism that might happen in places downtown, if I look at reduction in the amount of paraphernalia and syringe litter, if those kinds of things go down, if people stop having their homes broken into, if people stop having their packages stolen, I think those are indicators that the camping ban would be working.
What do you think people on both sides of the debate most often fail to understand about one another?
I think that the people that are typically pro-camping ban, that type, I think they may fail to understand that the people on the opposite side are driven by compassion and empathy most of the time. And I don't think that the people that are anti-camping ban, I don't think that they are lawless, ruthless individuals, that they don't care about the business owner, they don't care about the taxpayer. I don't think that that's necessarily the case most of the time. And I think the people on the anti-camping ban side, I think that they fail to understand that the people that are maybe pro-camping ban, what they do is they invest time and treasure and all of these things into their community. I think about a business owner that may have to hose off human feces off their front step in the morning. Nobody should have to do something like that. I think about a property owner that owns apartments downtown that they rent to college kids, and their apartments are broken into a week before move-in and the walls are covered in feces and there's needles everywhere. That's not fair to them.
And that's something that you've heard that has happened?
Yes, personally, that is a real-life example of something that could happen. The anti-camping ban people, one of the big things that I think that they miss or they don't want to understand or they just refuse to listen to is the fact that not all people experiencing homelessness are just poor souls that are They're desperate for a hand up. They need that one person to be kind to them. A lot of these people are here because of the decisions that they've made. A lot of these people here are not necessarily good people, and they don't care about rules. They don't care about the business owner. They certainly don't care about the taxpayer. They don't care about structure. They just want to live their life as selfishly as possible. I know it's super uncomfortable to say stuff like that, but this is the reality that not all people experiencing homelessness are the same. Not all people experiencing addiction are the same. I've talked to people from Parkersburg. I've talked to people from Charleston. I've had conversations with people in Berkeley County. There are a lot of people that are wondering how we're going to address homelessness as an issue. And again, there is no one bill that is going to solve every single facet, but you have to look at what bills, what pieces of legislation, what initiatives, what policies are going to get you net gains in the long run.
After a break, we'll talk with our panelists about some of Morgantown's other housing challenges and tensions.
Our poverty rate in Monongalia County is somewhere around 17 to 19%. And like 3% of our housing is affordable? I mean, that just doesn't work. And that's a policy failure.
You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part with a grant from the CRC Foundation.
Music lifts us up and brings us together, even when we can't get together in person. Mountain Stage brings you live performances on the air, online, and in our podcast. They remind you how it feels to be in a live audience listening to live music. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find a link to our stations and our podcast online at mountainstage.org.
Hey, Trey here, and you're listening to Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. The camping ban laws in hundreds of U.S. cities, including Morgantown, are not the only barriers that homeless people face. Laura Jones, executive director of Milan Pushkar Health Right, the free health clinic, says new statewide legislation has prevented them from doing the harm prevention work they used to do.
Prior to the law that requires us to be licensed as a harm reduction program, we were able to function as a evidence-based best practice program. And as soon as the legislature got involved, all those best practices pretty much went out the window. So we struggle to continue to provide the kind of harm reduction that people need in order to prevent HIV and Hep C and a whole lot of other bad things that can happen to people.
Can you explain to me what practices?
Initially, we were able to give people as many syringes as they asked for. We also were able to give syringes to someone to give to someone else. It's called secondary exchange.
Sure.
That's gone. We are also now required to see evidence that the person lives in West Virginia or a driver's license. We create a code for each unique individual so that it becomes anonymous after that. But people who are concerned about showing their ID or worried about the police, they're not going to come to a program that isn't anonymous. We also spent a great deal of time during COVID making sure that people had smoking supplies. Smoking, while I would never normally tell someone to smoke, it is safer than injecting. And we spent a good deal of time helping people with the supplies. And one of our local delegates basically has made it his life's work to stop harm reduction in West Virginia, but in particular, he also went after smoking supplies. They can buy smoking supplies down the street perfectly legally, or anyone else on the street could buy some and hand them out. But a licensed harm reduction program cannot offer that service and keep people safe. So those are the kinds of decisions that are made out of reaction rather than evidence-based practice.
When Laura Jones talks about the ban on smoking supplies, she's talking about a bill Republican delegate Gino Chiarelli was lead sponsor on during his first term in office. The state law now bans harm reduction programs from distributing any smoking equipment to people with addictions. Chiarelli says any group offering free drug paraphernalia just makes it easier for people to do drugs and does more harm than good. Minister Zach Morton says another part of the bill required people to present a West Virginia ID to access clean needles. He says that creates an additional barrier for people who often don't have identification. Zach, the way I see you, you're kind of serving people who are unhoused in a lot of different areas and circumstances. And from what you can see, who is falling through the cracks in this network of services that you have here in the Morgantown area?
Falling through the cracks is the language that we use so often, but man, it's not a little crack, because things are only trending in one direction. It's not a positive direction in terms of all these different influences that converge to make it harder for people to stay in housing, right? I think one of the biggest cracks that people do not understand is that our housing list for single bedrooms has been closed for a number of months here because the list is so long. It's got hundreds of people on it. And so doing it the right way is getting onto that list. But you can't even get on that list now because the need is so great, right?
There's a housing shortage in West Virginia and Appalachia writ large.
Yes.
And that's not just dealing with the homeless situation. We have a shortage of housing, and we certainly have a shortage of housing for people who are low income.
The biggest key in it is to understand that there's no shortage of structure.
Yeah.
It's affordability.
Yeah. So what our poverty rate in Monongalia County is somewhere around 17 to 19%. And what, like 3% of our housing is affordable? I mean, that does not compute. That just doesn't work. And that's a policy failure, right? That regardless of how we think about any individual, behaviors or consequences or, the different failures that can happen there, like there's these large overarching policy failures that just are creating such a bottleneck. And even when people navigate and go through the housing list and they can get to the top of the list, they have to do an interview with a landlord now, and they can be rejected by that landlord for no particular reason, right? So we just have such commodity-based housing that does not lend itself to serving the need that our community has.
For people who are on disability, Aaron Shelton with Rainbow House says the maximum benefit isn't enough for landlords.
The maximum amount that someone can get for SSI right now in West Virginia is the federal minimum, which is $994. That's the 2026 rate. A lot of landlords and a lot of apartment complexes want to see that you make 2 times or 2.5 times the rent before they will rent to you. If not, they want you to have a cosigner, which most people experiencing homelessness don't have. So we have people who are disabled, that's not their fault, and they have income, but it's just not enough. And then if they are lucky enough to come up on a waiting list for some type of housing subsidy or affordable housing, then oftentimes there are background checks. And by that time, they've been experiencing homelessness for maybe years, right? So maybe they have some petty criminal charges on their record, or maybe they're a person in their 60s and they had an eviction at one point in their lives. That all comes back to bite them. And after all of that time waiting on all of those lists, they get told no.
Another issue for homeless people in Morgantown involves a consolidation of services away from downtown. Hazel's House now provides a range of support programs for homeless people in an updated Ramada hotel and conference center several miles outside the city. The facility is up a steep 2-lane highway without any pedestrian sidewalk. Mindy Thorne, who works with Catholic Charities, says it's complicated.
So outside of those that were able-bodied and able to walk to the location where the bus stop was, that extra work was put on the people that are already doing the heavy lifting. We were loading the clients up in our cars and taking them to appointments, taking them to their jobs, taking them to the places that they needed to go, because we couldn't sit down in a room and have a conversation about logistics and talk about how this could actually benefit those who are in need versus check a box as a service.
How are the people who need services getting to this place on the hill now?
So right now they are taking the bus. There is a program right now through Mountain Line Transit, the social service bus pass program.
So is that just like the regular public transportation here?
That is the regular public transportation, but the social service bus pass program is a program where social service agencies are able to get bus passes to hand out to our clients so that they can get where they need to go. Unfortunately, that program is ending this year in June, and after that, people will have no way to get to Scott Avenue, to get up to Hazel's House of Hope, where all the services have been moved. There will be no free or subsidized way for individuals experiencing homelessness to be transported to the place where all services are now located.
In addition to the end of the subsidized bus pass program, there's another catch. Who qualifies for bus passes? Thorne and Shelton say this affects their clients.
So additionally, a program with Mountain Line Transit Authority is citizens living within the city limits of Morgantown qualify for bus passes. And technically, my shelter is within the city limits of Morgantown. Their stay at my shelter is not considered a permanent residence, so they do not qualify for those services.
Same, and we're a nonprofit, so it's a taxes-based bus pass that people are eligible for, so they can't get it based on their residency at our shelters. And then I also have many clients who move out, and we're offering continued case management services. We're helping them apply for bus passes, and they can't get bus passes because their landlord is not up to date on their property taxes.
I asked Delegate Gino Shirelli about the challenges facing some homeless people since the relocation of social services away from downtown Morgantown.
I think that there are a number of ways for people to actually make it up here. The Mountain Line Transit makes runs pretty frequently, and I would say that the utilization rate of the services up at this location indicates to me that people aren't having as many problems getting here as some critics may try and have you believe.
While many panelists at the community forum say the new location can make access more difficult for clients, Shirelli sees the situation differently.
It's much bigger. There are a number of services that are housed here. It's kind of like almost like a complex of sorts. It sort of does a more whole person approach instead of just saying, okay, here's a shelter, that's all you need. There are a number of addiction services and places that will refer out for additional specialties and services. It just seems like it's more an all-encompassing approach. I just saw a bus go by. What they're able to do here offsets the challenges that have come with relocating from outside of town.
What wasn't working downtown? Those services were located there. They were closer to the need of the homeless. When you've moved it away, it seems like it makes something for people who have a hard life. It gives them another hard obstacle to overcome. No?
I think that's reasonable. However, what they're able to do here, how they're able to approach people's problems, how they're able to meet people where they're at, they're able to do that a lot more effectively up here. And I think that, again, with the quality of services that are rendered up here, yes, it might be more of a challenge to get here, but I think that the quality of outcome is increased to the point where I think it was necessary. I think one of the criticisms and one of the problems people had with having it downtown is that while there are people that are genuinely striving to get better, that don't cause problems, there are people that are looking to take advantage of systems and handouts, frankly, but they don't really care about getting better, and that leads to other problems.
Minister Zach Morton and Laura Jones of HealthRight say it feels like society keeps adding barriers for those trying to get help.
A number of people who have been here for a long time, longer than I have, just because their houses doesn't mean this isn't their home. The impact to morale for people was pretty devastating, I think. of people who belong here.
Laura.
And the farther away they are from services. So, for instance, we're lucky to have one of the best Social Security gurus out there who has gotten Social Security for literally hundreds of people by really knowing the system and getting things done. And a lot of times those phone calls have to happen at our clinic in Jack Torsney's office. And he has to know where the folks are to make sure they get there on the right day for that Social Security call. And if they don't make it, it just puts the time off farther and farther and farther. And the farther away they are outside of town, the harder it is to get access, to know what time it is, to get to those kinds of appointments that could literally change their life and give them an income that would help them get housing.
I asked the panelists, what can create meaningful change? Shelton says any meaningful change will start by creating more affordable housing.
We can create policies that require developers to make a certain percentage of new residential units affordable housing, right? We can do zoning reforms that allow for different types of housing to be built. That's something that would create sustainable change. I also think that in addition to funding social services, we need to fund prevention, right? So eviction prevention funds. We have people that are losing their housing and going on to become homeless for potentially years because they lost a job and are 1 or 2 months behind on rent. We need eviction defense for people who are low income and are facing eviction. Right now they're going to court with no defense, right? So I think a combination of prevention, development of affordable housing, and funding of social services in which funders listen to social service providers about what we need to serve our people.
Our audience at the Housing Forum was filled with community members who had questions and wanted to share their perspectives. Garrett Skinner, a student at WVU, said some policies seemed like a targeted attack on the unhoused population. Mindy Thorne, director of Catholic Charities of West Virginia, agrees.
I think that it's because this population of individuals don't know how to advocate for themselves, and we're moving into a new generation of those of us that aren't afraid to advocate for them, or that are maybe some fresher set of ears for them to fall on, to where it is getting to a point where they may not be able to stand up here and tell you what they need today, but they will tell me, they will tell Aaron, they will tell Laura, they will tell Zach, and I will tell you. And that's the biggest thing.
Can I maybe be the devil's advocate? Here you are as a student. I think that West Virginia University to this area is probably the biggest money-making industry in this area. And that if you have prospective students who are coming to town and their parents, and they see a great deal of homeless activity, they might say, yeah, maybe I'll go to Marshall, or maybe I'll go to Ohio State University, or someplace else. That the city's ability to address the homeless issue may be something that would dissuade somebody from coming to this university.
Oh, there's homelessness everywhere.
Good luck finding a city that has a university that doesn't have a homeless problem.
And again, that's where perception comes into play. If we are able to spin it and say, you know, look at all of these services, look at all the things your city, look at all the things your university is doing to combat this, it's going to draw more people in here than it's going to turn away.
Yeah, I also just think that the reason why decisions are made the way that they are, I think sometimes, is because they look for a quick solution to what they're thinking is a particular problem, right? What you were talking about with the perspective of folks comes out with, and the stigma is highlighted in that. And the solutions that we're talking about require money. They require building political will. They require changes in policy. They require looking at all other intersectional areas in order to solve the problem. It's not a quick fix, right? And so to really make progress, I think we have to approach this that there are no quick fixes to the situation that we're in.
What I've heard in Louisville, what I've heard in Los Angeles, what I've heard in New York is this same thing over and over again, that a community comes together, we have this annoying, possibly scary homeless issue, and we are going to make some type of local ordinance that says we're going to move them away, or we're going to say we're going to fine you if you're camping. But there seems to be little care as to where it is they're going to go. Do we have the capacity to move them into affordable housing, homeless shelters? Do we have the capacity in our incarceration facilities? Mindy.
And that's exactly what I was referring to earlier, is these people made these policies without there being an understanding for the downhill that this was going to create. There was no solution as, okay, so we're going to put this camping ban in, but in substitution for that, this and this and this are going to be in its place. There was none of that. It was, no, we're done.
Another audience member brought up a question about the urban-rural divide for Aaron Shelton.
And we have a lot of delegates who are rural counties who may not care about this, quote, urban problem. And so thinking about how the urban areas need to maybe form a coalition. You know, the Charleston, Martinsburg, Parkersburg, Huntington, and Mon County need to perhaps form a coalition at the state level. So how does one get legislation passed when the urban representatives are in the minority?
Yeah, I will say, I think that a lot of people from rural counties in West Virginia that are experiencing homelessness are coming to Morgantown, to Huntington, to Charleston to receive services. I've heard so many heartbreaking stories of rural homelessness, and it just flies under the radar in some of those counties because it's not as visible. But they come here for services because they don't exist in their counties. So I'm urging delegates from rural counties to maybe acknowledge and chip in on the services that are being provided to folks in their communities who are also experiencing homelessness.
A journalism student at WVU named Laney asked Mindy Thorne what role media and media attention play in the issue.
It's human nature for us to stay within our comfort zone. It's a form of self-defense. And some of our best learning experiences are when we cross that boundary into uncomfortable. And if the media is willing to make that more available to those that are willing to listen, versus it primarily laying on the shoulders of events like this, or with individuals such as those sitting on this stage being out there and having those conversations, the media has direct access to a much larger number of people than any of us could ever imagine of having in one room in a single day. So I think that that's the biggest thing, is having the media actually reporting on what result this camping ban is going to have on our community members, what result this funding from the Mountain Line Transit Authority ending is actually going to have on our community members. Because then that's going to cause the community members to start asking questions of, well, why can't I donate my bus passes? Well, why can't I do that? And it's going to start putting pressure on the decision makers to actually make the decisions that benefit the people.
Our panelists agreed that politicians often think their bills and laws will help solve the underlying issues of homelessness. Audience member Greg Traynor, a retired psychologist, spoke to this point.
We talked about money. Richest country in the whole daggone world, and we're so stingy with our money. And I don't know that they have the attitude that, okay, we'll try this program, we'll get this going, and we'll get this going, and this is going to fix it. Well, it's not going to fix it. A lot of these folks are going to need support their whole lives, or off and on, right? And the problem isn't going to go away. So the legislature can't think, well, we're going to start this program and you fix it. Well, you didn't fix it, so we're going to cut your money off. That's what compassion is, right? That's what compassion is.
Zach, I feel like that's what you were talking about before, is that this isn't a quick solution.
What I think maybe has shifted in some ways is, you said that we're really stingy with our policy. In a way, that's true, but we're also really generous in our fiscal policies towards those interests that already have the most money, right? And we're really stingy with those who need services and need help. Right? That's where we're stingy. That needs to be flipped. But this is a long term. I think the intersection here is that we're talking fundamentally how we want to organize and fund and what values our society is going to have and needs to have.
Exactly. The substance use problem in West Virginia took us 20 years to get here. We have expanded treatment. We have some measure of harm reduction in our community. And now the question that legislators are asking is, why do we still have a problem? You know,
Right, like the needle exchange. Okay, that's to prevent disease. If you stop it, we're going to have disease. I mean, it's not going to cure the addiction.
and we're going to arrest our way out of the...
Right, and how much money does it cost to incarcerate people?
Exactly.
I mean, you could put them up in a fancy hotel room for what it costs to incarcerate them.
It costs a lot less to just clean up an encampment than it does to incarcerate somebody.
The challenges facing homeless people are often discussed clinically in terms of statistics and numbers, potential laws or policies. But at our community forum in Morgantown, I think we heard something else. We talked about social service systems. We discussed how laws shape where people can and cannot be. And underneath all of that, the conversation was, in many ways, about distance, both physical and perhaps more importantly, emotional distance. To me, part of the homeless question seems to be, who are we willing to see in our communities? And who do we turn away from? And what kind of community do we want to be? You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this episode was me, Trey Kay, Samantha Gatzik, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to the folks at MICA, the Mountaineer Indivisible Citizens Action Group, for asking me to moderate their community event. Special thanks to Rich Dennis, Ron Allen, and Cynthia Fox, and the WVU Law School for Community Engagement for sponsoring this event. And thanks to the Gluck Theater at the WVU Mountain Lair. Thanks to Walt Harms and his team here at the Gluck Theater, we are really grateful for them. Michael Lipton, Tristan Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. We are also supported with a grant from the CRC Foundation. Hey, we'd love to get your thoughts about this episode. Would you share them with us on our Facebook page or on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Us Them Podcast? Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the mentorship program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.